Prof here, and just got out of work on my drive home. Since I got 45 minutes, and there was a big launch today. AMD put out the 7000 series Zen 4 CPUs. I thought I'd get the camera going so I can have a little talk about that because there's something interesting that I thought about. Before we get going here, though, let's pop this bad boy into sport mode and get going. That is the one nice thing about leaving. Working second shift now. Gotta kill the inside lights there. I'm gonna be real dark here, but maybe when I say real dark, holy jeez. Is that better? The camera's moving around because I'm going around corners. Alright. I think I should be able to leave the inside lights on here so you guys at least can see me a little bit. Otherwise, once I hit the highway or freeway, then highway, it is going to be pitch black. And now we're on the on-ramp, so let's give her some beans. Alright, now that the beans have been given, we can talk. Here's what it's like without any lighting in the car. I don't know if that's going to be any fun for you guys. I'm here. Yeah, if I put the map lights on, you at least get something. So what we're here to talk about should have been like getting this here. So we're going to talk about on the drive home here. You know, I got about 45 minutes or so. Hopefully it doesn't take that long. You should already know that with the bar down below. But something real big, really big, is the fact that these AMD CPUs are hitting 95C. You're like, Elliot, that's fine. Everybody said it's fine. It is fine. Current AMD CPUs can hit 95C, and it's fine. A lot of you don't know that, or you think it's a bad thing. It's not. They were fine up until there. It was only once it went past that they would throttle. So this is nothing new. I mean, how they're handling it is new, which is great. So the fact that it'll immediately hit thermal limit and then stay there. That is how I've been programming my computers to do that for a long time. My current system it just got retired. As I've been able to go to X570 and a 5950X, is the one that got retired is my 6900K. That thing, under load, even water cooled. If you guys have seen Anthrax, you'll know it's got a 480 and a 360 in it. We're reaching inefficiencies of the water block at this point. That ran at 90 seats. That's how overclocked it was. It was fine. Ran at 90 seats at load, or just under maybe, all the time, and it's fine. So that's how I have mine manually set up to do. AMDs can easily go up to 95, and they're not going to throttle. So, for AM4 CPUs. So I'm glad to see AMD doing what I did essentially manually. Because why not take advantage of that performance if it's there? So, as long as you're with, I get 95, it'll keep boosting it as long as it's got power and it's stable and everything else. Where's this issue then? Isn't that a good thing on it? Yes, it is. Just like I think Intel allowing 12th gen to just use as much power as it wants. That's an amazing thing as well. Like if you want, these shouldn't be default modes, and I don't think in either case they are. The reason why they shouldn't be default modes is because you might not have that thermal headroom. Because the trick with this 95C thing is, whatever cooler you put on it, it's going to sit at 95C. So obviously your performance on a stock cooler, which doesn't exist for this, but like imagine you take like a Race Stealth and put it on there. It'll be 95C. It's going to throttle. On the same token, it's been proven that on a 360mm rad, Gamers Nexus was using the Arctic cooling ones, which I believe are even a bit thicker. They might be, instead of 25mm, they're 30mm, at least on some of them. And now we're off the freeway onto the highway, for those wondering. Even more remote. I do have a car in front of me, but here. Yeah. I don't live in the middle of nowhere, but pretty darn close. Yeah, so that's the thing, is even on the 360mm radiator, that's why I think I've said, just because the GPUs, as much as I am recommending against people from doing water cooling, with these new higher wattage GPUs, and like Intel 12th gen, and now how AMD works, it is a better time than ever to do water cooling. But my god, just doing water cooling fucking sucks. Like, it's a pain in the ass, guys. Like, like, if you take a computer build, right, water cooling is as much work or more work, as long as you're not doing something funky with, like, RAID arrays and, like, the setup of it in software. Water cooling is as much or more work, usually more work, I would say, than the rest of the build, both physical build, like planning, building, software installation. Water cooling is more complex than the entire rest of the build. Some of you may argue with me on that. So like you can't just swap parts out. You're going to buy parts, and a lot of you are going to want to build a computer that same day. It ain't happening with water cooling. I don't think it really happens with normal build. Budget yourself like 3 days. You got testing parts before you put them together. Then you have building it. Then you have troubleshooting it, and then you have all the software. And I stand by that. I think you should fully set up a system before you use it, rather than trickle. Oh, I need to do this. Oh, that's not working. Oh, this is fucking annoying. I should have done that originally. Just set it all up all in the beginning. So what the issue here is, we're running at 95C. It took me a while. I'm bearing the lead here, and that is fan curves. All of these testing that I have heard of is always 100% fan speed. Why? I mean, I understand you get the best performance, but nobody runs their system at 100% fan speed. I, in fact, build my system to try and run them at the lowest fan speeds possible. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but like realistically, under normal use, your fans, if they're like 12 to 1800 RPM fans, should not be going over 50% if you have a decently configured system, whether it's airflow oriented or if it's like more closed off, like a fractal define Heck, my home theater PC actually has reverse airflow. Some of you think that's freaking crazy, but it works better. Air comes out the front because it's like under the TV. Um, there are some ways of doing that, But so here's the issue: is Asus, for example, they basically their maximum temperature that you can set in the fan curve for the longest time, even pre-UEFI, has been 75 Celsius. That means that if your AMD CPU is designed to run at 95 Celsius, if you go off of CPU temperature, which if you plug into the CPU header, it will. You usually can't change that one. And by default, it will. So everybody's system, if curves, I haven't seen any new motherboards yet because nobody's talked about those. I don't know if they're allowed to or not, but this is day one release. It's been about the CPU performance, right? And you would want to then ignore. Am I going through a little tiny town? I'm just slowing down to go through the lights here. We'll be through shortly. That's how big of a town or city this is. There's a couple of them along the way here. So there's always been 75C. We're going back to even pre-UEFI when Asus was the only one to have more than one PWM fan header. Now I've seen on some newer motherboards like ASRock, which is usually what I've switched to. I've also recently used Gigabyte because of Mooski. You might see 80C or 85C. I think I might have seen 90 on an ASRock board, but that is a hard cut. 90C, your fans are 100 degrees, 100%. Okay? So like in this case, if you run it off the CPU fan header, which most people run their CPU coolers off of, your fans are going to be at 100%. Yes, technically, that gives you the best performance, right? But in most cases, more fan doesn't get you more cooler, like more cooling. It might slightly, like 1 or 2 degrees in a normal way of configuring things. In this case, though, it is always going to run at 95C. So you almost need a more dynamic fan curve, like something that, we're through the town, actually by a little bit more, I got to speed back up. Yeah, it was sped up scooter there. But so like your standard fan curve will not work anymore. And why that's interesting to me is because I actually thought for the longest time fan curves don't work correctly. You should be able to target the temperature. The only piece of software I've ever seen that done that is Jace 2 Cents showed it off within the last year or so. It was on a GitHub page. I don't remember the exact thing. I'll try to include it down below. But that actually let you mix and match through software the person had developed and stuff like that, and pulled from other places. Where like you could have lower front fan of your case increase in fan speed off of your GPU, and your GPU could be a different brand because it's pulling all of this stuff. I don't know if it's through hardware info or hardware monitor, or where it's pulling all this stuff from. But you could find, and then so you could pull, like say for your motherboard's controlling fans, you could use a temp from another device, which is really cool. But the thing that was next level to me is you could set a target temperature. I think all fan curves, like all these places added these graphical UI PWM fan curves that you can do in UEFI. How many of you actually configured them, right? Asus is probably the best. They have been for even pre-UEFI. And they actually have the auto fan curve creator where it would sense your lowest fan speed and then create an appropriate curve. I can tell you ASRock's is crap. It does sense the lowest fan speed, sometimes very incorrectly. If you're running your lowest fan speed, it's almost always 20% on modern fans. At least if you use like Noctua or any like decent fan brand, might be able to go a little bit lower. Might be able to go might have to be a little bit higher if it's like a bigger fan. So a lot of times bigger fans are lower RPM, but they move more air, so that's fine. But ASUS was interesting because it would give you, this is important when it wasn't PWM, it would give you a starting fan speed. Like it has to be at least this high for the fan to start spinning, RPM wise. And then it would also give you the lowest fan speed you could go to. So sometimes you would start it and you actually go lower because it was just barely turning it. So that was like very good, but you still always made this fan curve. It was temperature on one and lower, I believe, x-axis and y-axis is going to be fan speed. Well, that's not going to work for the new AMD chips because they're always at 95C. Always. And actually, if you overclock, I think it's like 115 you can push it up to, which, great, because all these chips could take this temp before, but that's not how the CPU worked. It was like, now the CPUs are much more like GPUs, where like an NVIDIA GPU, it'll hit, 83C roughly, and then start downclocking. And the closer it gets to that, the more it'll downclock. But realistically, until the modern age of overbuilt coolers on everything, because they make one for the 3080 or 3090 and slap it on everything all the way down to a 3050. Up until this point, it's been everything goes up to 83 Celsius on the standard fan curve built in the cooler, and that's where you get your performance. You know, and it can turbo higher if you have better cooling into the case, etc. So I'm glad that CPUs are going there, but that means that we're going to have a new way to do fan curves, because otherwise your CPU, like anything going off the CPU fan hair, which is the place where most people plug in their CPU cooler, that fan speed is always going to be at 100%. And I was thinking about this as well. You would think you might be able to look at the standard OEM stock AMD cooler that comes with the CPU to get an idea of how they are handling it. And here's the thing. They're not. The chips that are coming out first are X series. X at the end. As of at least the 5000 series, if not earlier, any X chips do not come with the CPU cooler. So we do not know how AMD, because in the past on first-gen Ryzen, on the X chips, they would actually fake increase the CPU temperature by 10 Celsius to make the fan spin faster. Now, they push out a GSA, so I thought that they would just be like, oh, we detected an X CPU, we run a more aggressive fan curve. Well, they were still going about it the old way of, oh, we have to trick it into using a more aggressive fan curve. It's like you guys make the chunk of the BIOS that does that. That later was reverted back, and they did what I was thinking of, is just have a more aggressive fan curve on X CPUs, rather than, why are we tricking the board to think it's hotter to run a more aggressive fan speed? It was backwards thinking. That's how AMD used to do things before they made a good chunk of the BIOS every time. But now that it's always at 95C, how do you set up your fan curve? You cannot have a curve. It is going to be 95C, 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 95C. And you can have like an idle state. That means it's going to go, and even a load, 95C. So your fan's going to ramp up, try to cool it. They won't be able to, because it's just going to keep it at 95C. And then when the load stops, they'll go down to nothing, and you can probably mostly have passive fans. That's one thing ASUS has done that I haven't seen anybody else implement properly is on PWM fans, you actually turn off the header and then turn them back on. They still have the best fan control, I would say, in a board, as much as the rest of their, they probably still have the best UEFI. Anytime we need them for any sort of support, it is atrocious. So I try to avoid them nowadays from motherboards, or really as much as I can. Monitors are still amazing. Even then, though, I've been slowly moving away, because because their offerings are getting less and less unique. Or they'll announce it and it's a year freaking later that it comes out. That's super annoying. If you're gonna talk about a product, it needs to come out within a reasonable amount of time. But yeah, so I am very interested because I don't have any of these motherboards. How these boards are controlling fans, or is it because they're hitting 95C and these boards still have that like automatic cap? It hits 75C by automatic 100% the fans. Is that why all these YouTubers are running 100% fan speed? I mean, obviously I know the more fan speed you have, better cooling, better performance, and they're just going for raw performance. And I'm not talking about the eco modes. Yes, you could run those, but like, think about it this way: as an enthusiast, you want to be able to run the maximum heat coming out of there. Say you got that Monster 360. I bet you that thing will do most of the performance at 60% fan speed as it does 100% fan speed, because there is a limit to the amount of heat that radiator can get rid of. And a decent set of fans on there does not need to work at 100% all of the time to move that amount of heat off the radiator. It's water cooling works a little bit different than because a tower cooler, the more air you move through that's how servers work. They just have hard heat sinks, and you just move a ton of air really fast. Cools them, decently well. Or you could cool the entire cabinet or building, and then just push air through them. So there's that whole thing there as well. But I'm just very interested in how we're having to do this fan curve, because it's not really a curve anymore. You basically have load state of 95C and then idle. And I don't want to hear my computer going, reamer, reamer, reamer. How I would do it, if you don't have that option really, is just set a static fan speed. Find the fan speed that you know cools it, and hopefully it's not too loud, and run that all the time. Because otherwise you're going to have a constant ramp up, ramp down if it's still done the old way. And this is something that would bug me personally, because the quieter I can get my system, better. Like, yes, I have very nice systems that look very nice, but if I don't even know they exist, the better. So I would like, when my thing was fully water cooled, even under load, full load, you couldn't even tell it was on. HVAC in the house was louder than the system was, considerably so. The one thing you could do that is something that I knew down when I preach to people, recommend, advise, is if you have a case that has all the same fans, they're all very similar fans, get them to all go into one PWM hub, and get that hub into a chassis fan header. Most modern motherboards with their UEFI PWM fan control, if you say it's a PWM, they will let you choose what temperature sensor to go off of. This is something I have done for many, many years, because the original Tough boards from Asus could do this, because they had extra sensors. Nowadays, most of those extra sensors are standard. So you can tell it to go off of VRM temps, for example. I treat it as more of a case temperature, like an internal case temperature, than the CPU temperature, if that makes sense. Because especially when using an all-in-one cooler, especially as an intake, you're not dealing with CPU temp, because you also have GPU temp, or say it's an exhaust as well. Your GPU temp contributes to your CPU's temperature. So you have more of an overall case temperature. And also, the overall case temperature, it does not boost like a GPU does. It does not idle like a CPU does. It's more of a constant temperature. Like, it'll ramp up as more heat builds in the case. Your VRMs, your PCI Express, or you can do like sometimes there's on MDF 2 slots, or chipset's a good one, very good one, because a lot of times it's under the GPU. Choose one of those and run your fan curves off of that. Sometimes you still have to tweak it a bit, because in the case of Flight, he has an all-in-one cooled CPU and GPU. However, being that it's a hybrid GPU, that is We gotta go through another little town here. Slowing down. That is, the VRMs are still cooled by the fan on the thing, like the little fan, not the all-in cooler. So what we found is we could keep the GPU happy, CPU happy, everything else happy, but the fan on the GPU would just ramp up and scream. And it still couldn't keep the VRMs cool, and he was actually getting stuttering, not crashing, like just low performance. We just had to increase the overall fan speed in his case under load because though the rest of the case was getting enough cooling, specifically the VRM was not able to pull enough fresh, like the air had to just move a bit faster through the case, circulate a bit faster, and then the VRM was happy on the GPU. See, that's where the software that Jason talked about might be interesting, is we might be able to control that chassis fan header off of VRM GPU temps. That might solve our issue there, you know? But that would be my recommendation. I haven't used any of the new boards. I hope to. I will personally not be getting one for my main rig because I believe you want the 3D ones. Because they showed off the 3D Tech with the 5800X 3D. I have one in the home theater PC. That thing slams. That is the fastest. Like the home theater PC, if you're running, is also a gaming PC. Home theater / gaming PC. That thing will never need more than 8 cores. My main desktop does. So I'm really hoping that later on down the line, you get your 3D V cache with 16 cores. They should be able to do with the newer chiplet design, I would think. But that's if you have a 3000 series or 5000 series CPU, wait. Especially if it's 3000, you can upgrade to 5000, or you can go to a 5800X 3D. There's also rumors that there should be a 5600X 3D, and possibilities. AMD has not removed the possibilities because AM4 has such a large install base. They might put 8-core Zen 4 stuff onto 8-core lower, Zen 4 stuff onto AM4. They haven't ruled that out because they haven't ended support for that yet. Completely, that is. That is not a guaranteed, like they've announced that, but that is a possibility. That'd be really nice for those of us on AM4 for upgrades. Keep your DDR4, blah, 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 blah. You know, you wouldn't have some of the newer features, but it would be a good way for them to sell CPUs and keep their user base happy. I don't know if they'll do that necessarily, though. You got to remember, right now, for AM5 Ryzen 7000, the only chipsets that are available are the top ones, tippy top. It's happened before. I would say the 3600 was a horrible deal when it came out if you actually wanted to use it properly, because you either had to use an old board, I'd purposely buy a lower end board, or you'd buy a very, very expensive X570 board. So a good one was about $300. A bad one is about $200. And I have one of those bad ones. X570 Tough Gaming Plus or something. I traded Frozen Flame for it because the B550 board I had would work better for him. So he just swapped it. It's only in the repair PC, but yes, I'm really, really interested. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Like, how do you think fan control is going to work with these CPUs always being at 95C? Because we can't have the standard fan curve anymore. That will not be a thing. At all. That will not be a thing, period. Without knowing anything about it, I'd recommend my chassis fan going off a motherboard temperature sensor, because you really should not need your fans to always go to 100%, because it's always going to be at 95C. No matter how much coolant, maybe liquid nitrogen or something, but no matter how much standard cooling you throw at it, maybe outside of like my big open loop water cooling loop, it's going to want to run to 95 Celsius or even higher if you crack it open and do 115 for the overclocking, which if you have an open loop, I probably wouldn't do that without an open loop. All right, so we're back in my city here, getting off the highway and headed home. Yeah. A little bit of heel toe here. Alright, into the garage. Got a lot of crap in here at the moment. Alright, guys, so let me know what you thought about this format. Did you like it? How did I sound? I'm just using the in-car mic. So if it sounds like shit, I apologize. I could use the link buds, which you have heard before. Those could be a bit better. But yeah, let me know your comments down below on what you thought about the fan curve issue, because standard curves will not apply to this. Just something I thought about with cooling, and I like to keep my system quiet. The standard methods of configuring that aren't going to work. And comment down below. Let me know what you think. If there are any YouTubers that have talked about this, or any tech press, talk about it down below in the comments. As always, I'm TheProfosist, and you can find me over on Twitter, Instagram, and all the other social media stuff. Have a good one. Peace.